Okay. Hi. For those who don't know, I'm Dana. I'm going to be talking about John Winthrop today and how he settled in America and his driving issues in America. So, John Winthrop was the first governor of Massachusetts and he arrived June 1630. So, just to bag it up, just a couple of months, just spring. Actually, no, we're going to back it up further. Um, so he was born into a well-off middle class family in England, and as a young man, Winthrop felt that England was in trouble. With all the inflation plus the population, he felt that there were a lot of people out there who wanted um, to gain wealth. Um, at the hands of their souls, so they were basically selling their souls for wealth. Um, and then the Church of England reform was, the efforts to reform the Church of England basically faltered. It was not successful. Plus, Puritans like John Winthrop himself were getting killed, so who wants to stay there? I don't want to die, so um, he was trying to decide whether to leave, um, his life in England or just to leave. The Massachusetts Bay Colony made it very easy for him to choose. It was a commonwealth in of England, which he had a chance for religious freedom. He could worship in the way he wanted to. So he eventually leaves. He sails west in the Arbella in spring 1630, and he finally arrived a couple months later in June 1630. And but while he was sailing, he delivers a sermon called "The City Upon a Hill," and he was reminding them of their covenant with God, and he urged his fellow travelers to honor their duties and obligations, or surely they will perish. So basically, just warning them, hey, this is what we're going to do. We are here to worship God and follow His word. And if we don't do that, if we stray, um, it's not gonna look too good. We're gonna die. Um, and in that, he also, one of his warnings on the city upon a hill was, if we deal falsely with our God in this work we have undertaken, and so cause him to withdraw help, his present help from us, we shall be made a story and a byword throughout the world. We shall open the mouths of enemies to speak evil ways of God and evil believers in God. We shall shame the faces of many of God's worthy servants and cause their prayers to be turned into curses upon, what did I say? Oh, upon us, till we are forced out of the new land where we are going. So I found it interesting because I felt that his city upon a hill, that sermon was kind of like the Jews when they were going to the promised land. Um, how, those who don't believe in that effort, or who don't believe in that, or who doesn't have faith in it that they will get to the promised land, that, they shall perish, or if they stray, they shall perish. So I just found that really interesting. I thought it was kind of like a correlation. I don't know. That was just me. I just felt that I was like, oh wow. So that's kind of how I felt he was treating it. Like, Massachusetts is basically the promised land that they were going to, and they had to prepare to go there to do good things. So they arrived there, and basically small town living, in Salem. And sorry, like, I'm looking at my notes because it's like so much I want to like cover. I want to make sure I hit everything. So anyway, they end up arrived. Salem was the capital at the time, but eventually it moved to Boston. Where John wanted that to be like their, you know, capital. Sorry, I don't know why I blinked on that. So anyway, they're there, and the Puritans' main focus was small towns, their congregation, and self-sustaining communities. So each community was self-sustaining, had their own church, and had their own niche. So artisans, craftsmen, they were all in these different small towns, and they were depending on each other. So yeah, they were interdependent because they were specialized, basically. And so to be um sorry. So they were successful um with these small towns, and the church was the town. Essentially, because to be a communing member, or to have a say so, or political say so, you had to be a member of the church first. So and to be a commu yeah, sorry. So you had to have a communing membership, um and you had to have a political voice. You had to have a communing um membership in the church. You had to own land, and you had to be a male, essentially. Um, yeah. So you had to be a male. So yeah. Anyway, and to be considered a community member, you had to admit you were a sinner, demonstrate repentance, demonstrate in faith in Jesus Christ alone for your salvation from your sins, and demonstrate by your living that you indeed possess saving faith. So Winthrop in his administration definitely wanted to lay down the law. They were very strict. I think towns thought that they would have more freedom, but it was basically um, Winthrop basically still had the upper hand in everything. And it was just ironic because, they came over here for religious freedom, and they really couldn't practice how they wanted to, and everything was just all together. And um, Winthrop was just really controlling and wanted everyone to basically worship how he would. And I see both sides because Winthrop came over thinking, oh, this is my calling. This is um what I'm called to do. This is my chance to lead these people the way that God intended, and everyone else kind of wanted their own way. They didn't want someone else to come in and tell them what to do, which that makes sense as well. So, yeah, went through it's basically on this idea that he is called to do these things, lead everyone, and basically have that colony be a model, have that Commonwealth be a model to the rest of England and the rest of Europe of how things are really supposed to be. And in turn, you know, he there were a lot of theological disputes because of this, because he was really on everything and everyone. You know, he laid down the law, and so I guess I'll go through the. I'm just trying to figure out what I want to um talk about first, but yeah. So basically, if you wanted to be a political official, you had to have a church membership, and I just went through all those of what church membership is, and because maybe like the mid 1630s, that's when the disputes um kind of arose. Um, so Roger Williams comes over, and he is just like, which from my understanding, um, Williams and Winthrop were really good friends. So he comes over and he feels that the system is not genuine, just because it's like they have to worship. Like they won't be considered, they won't be a citizen unless they go to church, unless they do this, unless they confess their faith in this. You know, they didn't, it really wasn't religious freedom, which Roger Williams felt it should be. And so they had to do all of this to even be a member, to be even be a citizen. So if those people weren't over there, then it's like, what else are they gonna do? Go back to England where everything is on fire? Like, no, they're gonna conform. So that's what Roger Williams, disagreed with. He felt that church and state should be separated, and um, they don't really have freedom to choose. How can you say, oh, we have these believers, when you're forcing them to choose that way, and it's not their free will of choosing that way? So like that was the disagreement there. And so Williams does have a church. So he came over and started a church. Sorry. um, Backpedaling, but he came over, started a church, and so he has that, and he convinces his church to break away from the Puritan colony, and of course, Winthrop is just heartbroken. He sees this as portrayal, portrayal, uh, betrayal, and he banishes Williams from the colony. So that's one disagreement. So when people don't agree with Winthrop in what he's saying, he's just like banishes them. And I find that, like I said, it's ironic because he wanted so much of his own um religious freedom that he's not really granting other people or giving other people that religious freedom. So this is like one of the ongoing issues that he really has in America is people disagreeing with him. And Williams was, like I said, from my understanding, they were good friends. Um, they had this disagreement, so he just, obviously felt betrayed by that. I mean, and then also I think if anyone else would have broke off from the colony, he would have felt that as betrayal anyway. But like I said, Winthrop is really in this mindset of, oh, this is my calling, this is what I'm here to do, and these people are not conforming. So out with you. Can't let one apple spoil the bunch, basically. So he sends Robert. Is that his name? No. What is his name? Roger? Roger Williams. Okay. So then another one is Anne Hutchinson, and she is a woman. Okay. Whoa there, right? First off, to to have a communing membership and a political voice um in the Commonwealth, you had to be male and a landowner. So she really doesn't qualify there. So honestly, Winthrop is just like, I'm sorry, I have to reposition myself. Winthrop is just like, oh my gosh, why are you even speaking? No, I'm just kidding. So, but this is a woman, first off, and she believed that but okay, let's discuss about Anne Hutchinson though. She wasn't just a woman, even though that's kind of how she was seen as, but her father was a pastor. Was a pastor, and she was well versed in the Bible. So she wasn't just a woman disagreeing. She had logic behind it, and like she was an avid follower of the Bible, and she knew the Bible. So she was speaking from knowledge, and she just did not agree with the way the church is going. She felt it was corrupt, and it started off, her and her husband lived across from John Winthrop. And, she started having these groups, discussions at her home, and they just eventually grew. And of course, Winthrop took notice of that. One, she's a woman and she's telling, God's word to everyone, which it's not particularly looked up on, especially because she was a woman, but she had a good following too. And John Winthrop was really worried about what she was telling um, her followers. And so ultimately, she was put on trial, and she just finally said, God is speaking to me directly, and that's when the court lost it. They're like, no, he's not. That is blasphemy, Yeah, so at that point, they had reason to, after she just came out and said, God is speaking to me directly, and they banished her from the colony. Surprise, surprise. And I don't know if I mentioned before, so Roger Williams ended up in Rhode Island. So did Anne Hutchinson. Yeah. So Out Away with You So he's just anyone who doesn't agree with what he's saying or the Puritan beliefs. You know, they're seeking religious freedom, but it's only within what he believes. You know what I'm saying? So he came over there for religious. He came over to Massachusetts for religious freedom, and all of a sudden, it's only surprise, surprise, it's only religious freedom under what he wants. So then, Thomas Hooker, he dislikes the arbitrary actions of the general court, and at this point, it's still those church members who are up high and political. Obviously because he outed Roger Williams and his uh the church and state should be separate. So yeah, Thomas Hooker hated how much say so John Winthrop had in um in each town's say so, and he wanted more decision making ability. Um yeah, so he just decided to leave and go to Connecticut. Um Again, you know, he wasn't necessarily banished. He disagreed. He did not like how much say so that the general court had in the everyday lives of each town and what they wanted to do, because originally it was supposed to be each town had their church, and the church basically ran that. They could practice how they wanted to, basically their religious freedom, but with the more representative government that they were moving towards, they really did not have a say so like they wanted to. So Thomas Hooker did not like that. So he just like went away to Connecticut. John Winthrop, of course, I mean, he felt some type of way, but I mean, they weren't in line with it. But he did take a lot of people with him. So, I mean, yeah, so that's that. And I guess this brings me back to my original point, which I could have said it before or after, I guess, I don't know. But Winthrop's administration really wanted to lay down the law. And as a result of all these things, he released, several creeds of blasphemy, adultery, and gaming. So he wanted people to worship in his mind the way he wanted to all the time. And you know, I mean, it was alright, I guess, but at the end of the day, like people have to have, a social life. I feel like to really have fun, like gaming. Like, they couldn't even have fun, like, so he was very raw, heavy. Um, yeah, and he was just bent on having, establishing a Christian commonwealth that that would serve as that for people. Sorry, that would serve as an example to people. Again, I apologize for looking down. It's just a lot of stuff for me to like. I have to hit the points. Sorry. So I have like notes and stuff. But yeah. So he lived in the New England wilderness basically his whole life. Um, he was a father figure to everyone. You know, he was the governor, but at the same time, like they were all Puritans, I guess. I mean, they were all Puritans, but he was that real stickler. Um, and despite the what's it called? Despite the I'm sorry, I'm looking for a word right now, and I just can't find it. Despite the theological disputes, wow, that's a good word. Theological disputes, still he was still able to, win elections for governor. He won governor 12 times between 1631 and 1648, which I believe he died in 1648. Yeah. Yeah. So he was able to win those elections despite his theological disputes, and basically whoever did not agree with him was outed, and he was just able to rule his colony. So he died in 1649. I'm sorry, I had to get this date right because it kind of matters. That date right, I had to like it. But so yeah, that's basically it. Um, John Booker. Oh, and about the Anne Hutchinson thing. Um, Anne Hutchinson, she eventually moved to New York and died in the Indian War. Of course, hope it's not spoiler alert for anyone. But yeah, she died, and John. What I found interesting was John looked up the response. He just was like, "Oh, well, that's what you get, when you don't follow God's word." Like, okay. Um, yeah, so I just found that kind of, it wasn't funny, but it was just like a bit comic relief because it was like, even still, after all of that, you still find a way to teach the law. Like, yeah. Well, that's what happens, It's kind of what you get. But anyway, I think that's all that I have on John Winthrop. Yeah, so again, I hope I did this right. I honestly don't even know. Anyway, you guys can probably figure it out by now, so I'm gonna be rambling. But hope this video quality is alright. I would have did it on my phone, but I don't have like a trackpad or anything to like hold it in place, and I didn't want to be like that the whole time, so I'm doing it on my laptop, which is really old. So please bear with the quality.